Wow, I just finished a fantastic study on the Islamic community throughout the United States and why they are supporting President Trump, to my surprise, after his travel ban from his 4-year term in office, when he identified Islamic radical Islam as the cause of much terror historically in the United States. And he was right in saying so, and the first president in the United States to take a stance and identify the problem, unbeknownst to many who just labeled it broadly terrorism. But he was able to identify, as a New Yorker, that there were a lot of Muslims behind the terrorism in the United States. And yet, to my surprise and many others, the Muslims are now endorsing President Trump in Michigan. 2 mayors, Islamic Muslim mayors in the state of Michigan, are endorsing President Trump because they see more peace through his policy and his previous administration than they have with Presidents Obama and Bush, who preceded him. And therefore, one even likened him unto an angel comparatively. And another said that because his life has been saved after being shot, that he believes God has preserved him to help bring peace to the Middle East. So what a mighty turn of events when the Muslim community embraces a Christian president who basically wanted to put a travel ban on Muslims from Islamic nations, and even a registry. He wanted to register Muslims and even put surveillance on the mosques and their communications therein, because he felt, and rightly so, that a lot of the hatred was originated from these mosques and places where people were being ideologically taught. And yet the Muslims are now seeing that the man's strength has brought peace historically in the Middle East, and there were no bombings underneath President Trump, whereas President Obama, it was said that more than 1,000 drone attacks occurred in Islamic nations when he was a leader and presided over the Oval Office and the weapons that we have in our military at his disposal. So it's rather interesting to see that the Muslims respect strength. The Muslims don't necessarily have a problem with his posture and speaking style, more direct. And as far as they're concerned, whatever it takes to bring peace in the Middle East is what they ultimately seek. Now, of course, not all the Muslims are for Trump, but a good number of them are. And it was rather eye-opening as I read 18 articles, some of which were from Al Jazeera, and quoting all these Islamic leaders in the United States who are endorsing President Trump. So it's an amazing turn of events. I was astounded myself as a historian, and yet the Muslim community are coming full circle and pursuing peace. And even some of the Muslims had anti-Muslim sentiments against their own radical groups, and then others were against Black Lives Matter, and some of them were against the LGBTQ movement and changing the curriculum in schools. They want their children to learn wholesome family values, traditional values, as they do in Islamic nations. So there was some degree of a common bond and common agreement and commonality between Christianity and Islam, and that they, who are the leaders of those communities of faith, were seeking and pursuing traditional family values, both in schools and curriculum and in policies and communications from their leaders. So it was rather interesting and eye-opening, to say the least. So I really encourage you to get a hold of this lesson and read it thoroughly, because it'll tell you what's coming in the future of the United States as well as around the world, because the United States is the melting pot of the world. We have a very diverse and multi-ethnic group of people living among us, and how they have assimilated and merged in Michigan, and how they're working together now to influence and impact swing states in our elections and our leaders is very amazing. It's very uncanny. It's very poignant and prophetic in this time, in this era, in this hour in which we live. And I believe God's going to awaken and visit the Islamic nations and communities around the United States and the world in a mighty way, because God versus religion is a reality that all of us must discern. And I've written a book titled God versus Religion, and I think there's coming a great awakening to the Islamic nations and community throughout America. And I look forward to returning to Dearborn. I've been there before. I love the food and the people. And the Ford Museum, Henry Ford Museum, is there as well. Took my daughter there. And I look forward to returning and being a blessing to the Islamic and the Arabic community. Been to Egypt, been to Dubai and Bahrain and other parts, Qatar and other parts of the Middle East. And it's a very exciting time when the nations are being shaken. God's going to be glorified. He's going to show up in their midst. Jesus is the Prince of Peace. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. They shall be called the sons and the daughters of God. I would not be surprised if Donald Trump, to the amazement and the shock of many, receives a Nobel Peace Prize in years, if not months to come, and what he's going to accomplish after he is elected again for a second term in office. So get ready. I really believe it's coming. Like it or not, it's still inevitable, because the swing states are very much leaning towards him. The specific ethnic communities who have been ignored and feel disenfranchised, they are betting. They even said, we're gambling on Trump because we believe he's a good bet and that he'll do what he says and stop war in the Middle East. And that's the Muslims' focus. So last election, Biden got the majority of the Islamic Muslim vote, and therefore he won. Prior to that, President Trump got more Islamic vote than Hillary Clinton, and he won. So who would have thought that the Muslim community would be the very community and the block of voters who potentially could decide the U.S. election? It seems to be very much true again here. In 2024, it'll be an extremely tight race. If there's a tie and you need me to vote, because I'm independent, I'm not Republican or Democrat. I voted both ways over the years. I voted for Trump, I voted for Obama. And if you need me to give a tie-breaking vote, if there's a tie, you let me know. I'm currently in the Philippines. I'll be happy to make the difference. But otherwise, God bless America. Let's stay united, because that's what all this AI and these hackers from Russia and China and Iran are trying to do, is to divide us both during the election and hereafter. So stay united and stay strong in prayer. And remember, Jesus is the same yesterday, today and forever, regardless of who is leading the nation in the White House politically. And ultimately, we all must bow our knees before Christ the King and give an account for our life on earth. So Jesus will judge the living and the dead, and his kingdom will have no end. The kingdoms of this world will be shaken and brought to an end. So remember, don't get too emotionally entangled in the affairs of men, because our life on earth is short, and you have to have eternity in your heart and be mindful of the purpose for which God created you and why you live and breathe. Amen. God bless you, my friend.